Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to talk about the sponsor for this video, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is a service that takes the hassle out of trying to offload your extra cards. They provide top buy list value for your cards without all the extra effort of traditional buy listing. The service is quick and easy. Simply send them your unsorted cards, and then Card Conduit will sort, grade, and find the best buy list price for each of your cards. They are fully transparent, giving you a detailed report of exactly what you sent and what they are paying you for each card. You can also see exactly what you'll get for your cards ahead of time by going to their price check tool on their website. Their fees are reasonable and their customer service is fantastic. They process quickly and submit their payments super fast. I personally used Card Conduit twice before they ever became a sponsor. They were amazing, guiding me through the process and clarifying any questions or hesitations that I had. I got a fair price for my cards, and they literally saved me dozens of hours in the process. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. So give Card Conduit a try today. I will be using them for all of my extra cards from now on, and I recommend that you do the same. Our patrons Dante and Philip are back with even more awesome games. Tonight they're joined by Playing with Power members Drake and Cal, who will come out victorious. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Cal piloting the partner pair of Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator and Tana the Bloodsower. This deck, better known as Temur Pirates, tries to cheat Glenhorn Buccaneer onto the battlefield as quickly as possible in order to kill the table in conjunction with Malcolm. Cal's opening hand contains a Time Twister, Eldritch Evolution, Mystical Tutor, Elvish Mystic, Misty Rainforest, Polluted Delta, and a Boseiju Who Endures. Next, we have Dante piloting the partner pair of Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator and Bruce Tarl Boorish Herder. While also a Malcolm and Glenhorn deck, this list leans more into a fast Underworld Breach focused game plan. Dante's opening hand contains an Intuition, Brainstorm, Silence, Gemstone Caverns, Spire of Industry, Marsh Flats, and his London Mulligan is a Dispel. After that we have Drake piloting Esika, God of the Tree. This is a Jeskai Ascendancy deck that uses its commander as a mana engine to storm off and win. Drake's opening hand contains a Faithless Looting, Wheel of Fortune, Ponder, Ignoble Hierarch, Thassa's Oracle, Marsh Flats, and an Underground Sea. Finally, we have Philip piloting Itsushi, the Blazing Sky. This is a mono-red Adnos deck that uses Nim Deathmantle together with a sack outlet to exile its entire deck and assemble a win. Philip's opening hand contains a Chrome Mox, Mana Vault, Soul Ring, Heat Shimmer, Goblin Engineer, Goblin Welder, and a Mountain. Without further ado, let's begin this Gigabrain gargantuan gaggle of gaming. Cal was able to start the most Twitter drama over Double Masters 2 and gets to start us off. But Dante has a pre-game action and puts Gemstone Caverns onto the battlefield, exiling Spire of Industry. Cal draws a card for turn and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tropical Island onto the battlefield. He casts Elvish Mystic. He ships the turn to Dante. Dante draws a card for turn and plays a Marsh Flats. He passes. Drake draws and plays an Underground Sea. He casts Ponder. He looks at the top three, rearranges, and draws. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Marsh Flats. He casts Ignoble Hierarch. He ends his turn. Philip draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Chrome Mox, imprinting Goblin Welder. He casts Soul Ring. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts Goblin Engineer. It enters and he fetches up a Nim Deathmantle into his graveyard. With an amazing turn 1 mono red start, Philip gives the turn to Cal. Cal draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Taiga onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. Cal passes. At the end of Cal's turn, Dante casts Brainstorm. He draws 3 and puts 2 back on top. He cracks his Marsh Flats, pays a life, and fetches up a Tundra onto the battlefield. Still in Cal's end step, Dante casts Enlightened Tutor. He fetches up a Jeweled Lotus onto the top of his library. The turn moves to Dante. Dante draws and casts Jeweled Lotus. He cracks his Lotus to help cast his own Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. He plays an Exotic Orchard. He ships the turn. Drake draws and plays a Boseiju Who Endures. He casts his commander, Esika, God of the Tree. He ends his turn. Philip draws and plays an Inventor's Fair. He casts his commander, Atsushi, the Blazing Sky. He sends the turn to Cal. Cal draws and also plays a Boseiju Who Endures. He casts Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing Elvish Mystic as an additional cost. In response, Dante casts Intuition, targeting Drake. Dante fetches up a Glenhorn Buccaneer, Savine's Reclamation, and a Fierce Guardianship. Drake gives him Fierce Guardianship and the rest go to his graveyard. With Eldritch Evolution still on the stack, Dante casts Fierce Guardianship for its alternate cost, targeting Eldritch Evolution. In response, Cal casts Deflecting Swat for its alternate cost, targeting Fierce. Swat resolves and changes the target of Fierce Guardianship to Deflecting Swat itself. Then Fierce Guardianship fizzles and Eldritch Evolution resolves. Cal fetches up a Glenhorn Buccaneer onto the battlefield. Cal moves to combat and swings Glenhorn at Dante and Malcolm at Drake. Both take it and Malcolm triggers, creating 2 treasures. Before the end of combat, Cal activates Glenhorn, discarding a card and pinging the table. Malcolm triggers, creating 3 treasures. Cal demonstrates a loop of discarding, pinging the table, creating a treasure through Malcolm, and drawing until his opponents are dead, and Cal wins the game. Wow, Cal kept a turn 3 win in his opener and was able to get there even through some interaction. Since that was a pretty fast game, how about another one? Dante brought back Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator and Bruce Tarl Boorish Herder. His opening hand contains a Mana Vault, Dockside Extortionist, Glenhorn Buccaneer, Mental Misstep, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Sacred Foundry, and a Wooded Foothills. Drake brought back Esika, God of the Tree, and his opening hand contains a Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Repeal, Sleight of Hand, Brainstorm, Force of Will, Scalding Tarn, and a Wooded Foothills. Philip brought back Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, and his opening hand contains a Heat Shimmer, Ruby Medallion, Dockside Extortionist, Mox Diamond, Molten Echoes, and 2 Mountains. Cal brought back Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator and Tana the Bloodsower, and his opening hand contains Jeweled Lotus, Fierce Guardianship, Finehorn Elves, Eldritch Evolution, Command Tower, Stomping Ground, and his Lennon Mulligan is a Worldly Tutor. And Dante gets to start us off. Dante draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a volcanic island onto the battlefield. He casts Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. He passes the turn. Drake draws and plays a Wooded Foothills. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a volcanic island onto the battlefield. He also casts Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. In what feels like major deja vu, Drake sends the turn to Philip. Philip draws and plays a mountain. He casts a Mox Diamond, discarding a mountain. He casts Ruby Medallion. He ships his turn. Cal draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts Jeweled Lotus. He cracks his Lotus to help cast his commander, Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Stomping Ground. He casts Finehorn Elves and ends his turn. Dante draws and plays a Sacred Foundry into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts a Mana Vault. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters and Dante creates 3 treasures. He casts his own Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. He moves to combat and swings Ragavan at Philip. Philip takes it and Ragavan and Malcolm trigger. Philip exiles a Ragavan Nimble Pilferer from the top of his library, and then Dante creates 2 treasures. Dante passes to Drake. Drake draws and moves to combat. He attacks Philip with Ragavan. Philip takes it and Ragavan triggers. Philip exiles Goblin Welder from the top of Philip's library, and Drake creates a treasure. In his second main phase, he plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a tropical island onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Esika, God of the Tree. He ends his turn. Philip draws and plays a mountain. He casts Dockside Extortionist. It enters, and in response, Dante sacks his 3 treasures to float 3 blue. Philip then creates 3 treasures through Dockside and then casts his commander, Atsushi, the Blazing Sky. In response, Dante casts Intuition, targeting Drake. Dante fetches up a Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting Swat, and a Pact of Negation. Drake chooses Fierce Guardianship, and Dante puts it into his hand. Atsushi resolves, and Philip ships the turn to Cal. Cal draws and casts a Mana Vault. He moves to combat and swings Malcolm at Drake. Drake takes it, and Malcolm triggers, creating a treasure. With no other actions, he passes. During his draw step, Dante takes a damage through his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he casts Glenhorn Buccaneer. In response, Drake casts Force of Will for its alternate cost, paying a life, exiling a blue card, targeting Glenhorn. In response, Dante casts Fierce Guardianship for its alternate cost, targeting Force of Will. In response, Cal casts a Fierce Guardianship of his own for its alternate cost, targeting Dante's Fierce Guardianship. Fierce counters Fierce, and Force of Will counters Glenhorn. With his win attempt stopped, Dante moves to combat. He attacks Drake with Malcolm and Cal with Ragavan and Dockside. They both take it, and Malcolm and Ragavan trigger. Cal exiles Rejuvenating Springs from the top of his library, and then Dante creates 3 treasures. Dante gives the turn to Drake. Drake draws and moves to combat. He attacks Dante with Ragavan and Cal with Esika. They both take it, and Ragavan triggers. Dante exiles a Dispel from the top of Dante's library, and Drake creates a treasure. In his second main phase, he casts Sleight of Hand. He looks at the top 2 cards of his library, puts one into his hand, and then the other on bottom. He casts a Soul Ring. He sends the turn to Philip. Philip draws and casts a Professional Facebreaker. He moves to combat and attacks Drake with Tatsushi and Dante with Dockside. They both take it, and Facebreaker triggers, creating 2 treasures. In his second main phase, Philip sacrifices a treasure to activate Professional Facebreaker, exiling Valakut Awakening from the top of his library. He plays Valakut Stoneforge into play tap from exile as his land for turn. He casts Molten Echoes, naming Dragon as it enters. All through, he passes to Cal. Cal draws and moves to combat. He attacks Drake with Malcolm. Drake takes it, and Cal creates a treasure. In his second main phase, he casts Birds of Paradise. He ships the turn. During his draw step, Dante takes a damage from his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he casts his commander, Bruce Tarl Boorish Herder. It enters, and he gives Ragavan double strike and lifelink until end of turn. He moves to combat and attacks Drake with Malcolm, Cal with Dockside, and Philip with Ragavan. Before damage, Drake casts Repeal, where X equals 3, targeting Malcolm. Malcolm is bounced to Dante's hand, and Drake draws a card. Cal and Philip take it, Dante gains 4 life, and Ragavan triggers twice due to double strike. Philip exiles a mountain off of the top of his library and a Duretti Scrap Savant off of the top of his library. Then Dante creates 2 treasures. He plays a Hallowed Fountain into play untapped, paying 2 life. He casts Daretti's Scrap Savant from exile. He activates Daretti's first ability, discarding Malcolm, sending it to the command zone and Otawara Soaring City, then draws 2 cards. All through, Dante ends his turn. At the end of Dante's turn, Drake pays 2 life to help cast Noxious Revival, putting Force of Will onto the top of his library. Drake draws and moves to combat. He attacks Cal with Ragavan and Esika. Cal blocks Ragavan with Finehorn Elves. Before damage, Drake casts Ad Nauseam. It resolves and he reveals Aristic Study, Abundant Harvest, Mox Diamond, Gemstone Mine, Marsh Flats, Vanishing Knack, Consider, City of Brass, Jataxian Probe, Preordain, Breeding Pool, Vampiric Tutor, Mental Note, Silence, Land Grant, Past in Flames, and a Jeweled Amulet, deciding to stop there. Then Finehorn Elves and Ragavan trade, and Cal takes the rest. In his second main phase, Drake plays a Gemstone Mine as his land for turn. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Breeding Pool. He casts Vampiric Tutor. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He pays 2 life to cast Jataxian Probe, targeting Dante. He looks at Dante's hand and draws a card. Drake casts Jeskai Ascendancy. In response, Dante casts Force of Negation for its alternate cost, exiling a blue card, targeting Jeskai Ascendancy. In response, Drake casts Force of Will, paying a life, exiling a blue card, targeting Force of Negation. Force of Negation is countered, and Jeskai Ascendancy resolves. Drake casts Jeweled Amulet. Jeskai Ascendancy triggers. Drake untaps his creatures and gives them +1/+1 until end of turn. Then Drake draws and discards. He casts Consider. Jeskai Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures and draws and discards. Consider resolves, and he looks at the top card, putting Manamorphose into his graveyard, and then draws a card. He casts Mental Note. Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures, then draws and discards. Mental Note resolves, and he mills 2 and draws. He casts Serum Visions. Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures, and draws and discards. Visions resolves, and Drake draws again, then scries 2. He casts Mana Vault. Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures, and draws and discards. He casts Preordain. Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures, and then draws and discards. Preordain resolves, and he scries 2 and draws. He casts Veil of Summer. Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures, and he draws and discards. Veil resolves, and he draws again. He casts Silence. Ascendancy triggers, Drake untaps his creatures, and then draws and discards. Silence resolves, locking out his opponents this turn. He casts Banishing Knack, targeting Esika. Ascendancy triggers, he untaps his creatures, and draws and discards. He taps his Mana Vault, adding 3 colorless. He taps Esika to return Mana Vault to his hand. He casts Mana Vault. Ascendancy triggers, he untaps his creatures and draws and discards. He taps Esika to return Mana Vault to his hand and then immediately recasts it. Ascendancy triggers, he untaps his creatures and draws and discards. He unearths Fate Stitcher, returning it from the graveyard to the battlefield. He activates Fate Stitcher to untap Esika. He taps Esika to return Mana Vault to his hand. He casts Mana Vault yet again. Ascendancy triggers, he untaps his creatures and draws and discards. Drake demonstrates a loop of returning an opponent's non-land permanent to hand through Esika, untapping Esika with Fate Stitcher, returning Mana Vault to his hand through Esika, and then recasting Mana Vault to untap his creatures and loot. He repeats this process until he's returned all of his opponent's non-land permanents and looted through his deck. Finally, Drake casts Thassa's Oracle. With no responses from his opponents and with an empty library, Drake wins the game. It's always awesome to see a unique deck win a game. Congrats to Drake on his unique win. Well, we have time for one more, so how about it? Drake brought back Esika, God of the Tree, and his opening hand contains a Light and Tutor, Gamble, Abundant Harvest, Chain of Vapor, Mystic Remora, Savannah, and a Mana Confluence. Philip brought back Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, and his opening hand contains a Nim Deathmantle, Bergi, God of Storytelling, Blood Moon, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, Inventor's Fair, and 2 mountains. Cal brought back Malcolm and Tana, and his opening hand contains a Flusterstorm, Tinderwall, Sylvan Library, Mana Drain, Misty Rainforest, Mana Confluence, and his London Mulligan is a Flooded Strand. Dante brought back Malcolm and Bruce Tarl, and his opening hand contains a Felwar Stone, Mystic Remora, Swan Song, Soul Ring, Sunbaked Canyon, Flooded Strand, and a Tundra. And Drake gets to start us off. Drake draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He taps his Mana Confluence to help cast Mystic Remora. He passes. Philip draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. The table feels horrible deja vu, and Philip passes. Cal draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He taps his Mana Confluence to help cast Tinderwall. Cal ships his turn. Dante draws and plays a Tundra. He casts a Soul Ring. Remora triggers and Drake draws. Dante casts Felwar Stone. Remora triggers and Drake draws again. Dante casts a Mystic Remora of his own. Remora triggers and Drake draws. With the fish properly satisfied, Dante ends his turn. During his upkeep, Drake taps his Mana Confluence to help pay for his Mystic Remora. He draws and plays a Savannah. He passes the turn, discarding to hand size. Philip draws and plays a Mountain. He moves to combat and attacks Drake with Ragavan. Drake takes it and Ragavan triggers. Drake exiles Mana Vault from the top of his library and Philip creates a treasure. In his second main phase, Philip casts Drake's Mana Vault from exile. Both Mystic Remorse trigger, and Drake and Dante draw. Philip casts his commander, Atsushi the Blazing Sky. He passes to Cal. Cal draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He sacrifices his Tender Wall, adding 2 red. He taps Mana Confluence to help cast his commander, Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. He gives the turn to Dante. During his upkeep, Dante pays for his Mystic Remora. He draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He casts his commander, Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. In response, Drake casts Enlightened Tutor. Mystic Remora triggers and Dante draws. Drake then fetches up a Mana Crypt onto the top of his library. Malcolm resolves and Dante ends his turn. During his upkeep, Drake taps his Mana Confluence to help pay for his Remora. He draws and plays an Otawara, Soaring City. He casts a Mana Crypt. Mystic Remora triggers and Dante draws. He follows it up with a Soul Ring. Mystic Remora triggers and Dante draws. He sends the turn to Philip. During his draw step, Philip takes a damage through his Mana Vault. In his main phase, he plays an Inventor's Fair. He moves to combat and attacks Drake with Ragavan. Drake takes it and Ragavan triggers. Drake exiles Serum Visions from the top of his library, and then Philip creates a treasure. In his second main phase, Philip casts Birgi, God of Storytelling. He passes. At the end of Philip's turn, Cal cracks his Misty Rainforest, paying a life. In response, Dante cracks his Flooded Strand, pays a life, and fetches up a Volcanic Island onto the battlefield. Then Cal fetches up a Steam Vents onto the battlefield tapped. The turn moves to Cal. Cal draws and moves to combat. He attacks Drake with Malcolm. Drake takes it, Malcolm triggers, and Cal creates a treasure. In his second main phase, he casts Sylvan Library. Mystic Remora triggers and Drake and Dante draw. He ends his turn. During his upkeep, Dante pays for his Remora. He draws and plays a Sunbaked Canyon. He casts Ranger Captain of Eos. It enters and he fetches up an Esper Sentinel into his hand. He casts Esper Sentinel. Dante passes, discarding to hand size. During his upkeep, Drake wins his Mana Crypt roll. Also during his upkeep, he pays for his Remora. He draws and casts Chrome Mox. Esper Sentinel triggers and Drake pays. Mystic Remora triggers and Dante draws. Chrome Mox resolves and Drake imprints Abundant Harvest. He casts his commander, Esika, God of the Tree. He taps his Mana Confluence to help cast Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer. All through, he gives the turn to Philip. During his draw step, Philip takes a damage from his Mana Vault. He moves to combat and attacks Cal with Ragavan. Cal takes it and Ragavan triggers. Cal exiles Boseiju, who endures from the top of his library, and Philip creates a treasure. In his second main phase, Philip plays a mountain. He casts Thrill of Possibility, discarding a card. Birgi triggers, adding a red. Remore triggers and Drake and Dante draw. Esper triggers and Dante draws again. He casts a Mana Crypt. Birgi triggers, adding a red. Remora triggers and Drake and Dante draw. Philip casts Nim Deathmantle. Birgi triggers, adding a red. Remora triggers and Drake and Dante draw. Set up to win his next turn, Philip passes to Cal. During his draw step, Cal draws 2 extra through Sylvan Library, paying 8 life to keep them both. He plays a Stomping Grounds into play untapped, paying 2 life. He moves to combat and attacks Drake with Malcolm. Drake takes it and Malcolm triggers. Cal creates a treasure and then ships the turn to Dante. During his upkeep, Dante lets his Remora die. He draws and sacrifices Ranger Captain of Eos. In response, Philip casts Valakut Awakening. Remora triggers and Drake draws. Esper Sentinel triggers and Philip pays. Birgi triggers and Philip adds a red. Valakut resolves and Philip puts his hand onto the bottom of his library and draws that many +1. Still in response, Philip casts Cathartic Pyre, targeting Dante's Malcolm. Remora triggers and Drake draws. Birgi triggers and he adds a red. In response, Dante casts Swan Song, targeting Cathartic Pyre. Remora triggers and Drake draws. In response, Drake casts Deflecting Swat for its alternate cost, targeting Swansong. Esper Sentinel triggers and Dante draws. In response, Dante casts Force of Will for its alternate cost, paying a life and exiling a blue card, targeting Cathartic Pyre. Remora triggers and Drake draws. In response, Cal casts Delay, targeting Force of Will. Remora triggers and Drake draws again. Esper Sentinel triggers and Cal pays. In response, Dante casts Mana Drain, targeting Deflecting Swat. Remora triggers and Drake draws. With no other actions, the stack resolves. Mana Drain counters Deflecting Swat, Delay counters Force of Will, exiling with 3-time counters on it, Swan Song counters Cathartic Pile, Philip creates a 2/2 Swan token, and finally, Ranger Captain of Eos' ability resolves. Did you forget that was on the stack? Because we nearly did. Dante casts Mox Diamond. Mystic Remora triggers and Drake draws. Diamond enters and Dante discards Hallowed Fountain. Dante exiles Simian Spirit Guide, adding a red. He casts Gamble. Mystic Remora triggers and Drake draws. Dante fetches up a card into his hand and then randomly discards Tandem Lookout. Dante taps his Sunbaked Canyon to help cast Glenhorn Buccaneer. Each of its opponents pass priority on the game-winning spell, and Glenhorn resolves. He moves to combat, attacking Malcolm at Drake and Glenhorn at Cal. They both take it, and Malcolm triggers, creating 2 treasures. Dante activates Glenhorn, discarding a card and pinging the table. Malcolm triggers, creating 3 treasures. Dante demonstrates a loop of activating Glenhorn, pinging the table, and creating treasures through Malcolm. He does this over and over until the table is dead, and Dante wins the game. Congrats to Cal, Drake, and Dante on their wins. Cal kept a fast hand in Game 1, and that was able to quickly overwhelm his opponents. Drake assembled a convoluted and impressive engine of his own design and brew that won the game in a convincing fashion. Dante fought through tons of interaction on his winning turn in order to get there. From top to bottom, these were some awesome games tonight. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.